Greetings, my dears. Welcome to our activity 2 of our smell week of thothtober. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Of course, in this video, if you've been watching, you already know what's going to happen. But I'm going to be sharing the activity for this week, this particular activity, and the PDF for you to participate is in the description, as well as a link to the Discord and the thothtober playlist. And then in the second half of the video, which is more like the second 75% of the video, I'll be sharing my experience with the activities. So without further ado, let's do it. I'm going to be 100% real with you. I'm still struggling this week. So just thank you so much for bearing with me, as it's been a very interesting one, to say the least. But yeah, so we're getting into aroma and memory. So our sense of smell is strongly tied to memory. Apparently it is the one that evolved before our other senses, which is really interesting. But also what I found really interesting in, looking up and learning more about our sense of smell is that scents and the scent molecules and that information that goes through our olfactory system, it goes straight to areas of the brain, whereas like the information that we get through like our eyes and ears, like vision and hearing, will go to like a relay center and then will be then directed to where it needs to go, which I found really interesting. Our sense of smell is clearly really important to our daily life and how we form memories, how we process and, create emotions around the experiences that we have. What I noticed from our last activity was that when I was determining these like scents and cards and putting them together, I was really going on a journey of like recreating, like I said, an experience. And so I find that really interesting when I think about the idea of aroma and the fact that it not only refers to a distinctive smell, but it also refers to like the atmosphere. And that is such a, like I said, in the inhalation reading, it's very much a time-bound and space-bound experience. Like the smells that you experience are very contextualized. And so I just find it really interesting how that works. And so it was really fun to notice that in working with smell, I was automatically working with kind of like my inner eye to be able to sort of recreate the surroundings that I had previously been in, which of course is memory. So it's interestingly goes back to our first week as well. So I thought that was an interesting thing to note. But yeah, so when it comes to smells, when a smell is processed, if it's processed as being like strongly linked to a certain emotion, apparently our brain can decide to store that information like forever. I read this article and it was really interesting how it said that like memories, or I think, yeah, like memories can be like locked in an area of your brain like forever, never to be touched again, like if you don't smell a particular smell, or until you smell a particular smell. So it's like an interesting thing that you can sort of like found a long lost memory through scent. It reminds me of something that I read about around like new memories for like trauma survivors, that you can have new memories that come up. And so I wonder what the link is there. It's not something that I looked into in depth. So just something that I thought about. So that being said though, for this activity, we're going to be making a list. For the first part is making a list of memory and scent connections. So memories that are strongly tied to a scent, or a scent that is strongly tied to a memory. And on the topic of, trauma and things like that, if it feels safe for you emotionally and it's practically like possible for you to do so, you might want to even seek out the smells that you're listing here and see if you can smell them and see what comes up, what memories in particular. But the physical aspect of actually smelling the thing is not totally necessary. So yeah, for this first part on this first page, just take some time, take some deep breaths, and list out some scents that are strongly tied to a memory, or memories that are strongly tied to a scent. Just make a list, as many as you can think of, and just enjoy that list making process. I think it is really surprising for me what came up, not things that I fully expected. And so once you're through with that, you're going to want to choose one of those memories. So choose one of them, and there will be a circle for a mind map, as it's usually called. We're doing it as a memory map. But yeah, write that in the circle. So like write the memory and the scent in the circle at the center. And then you're going to want to choose at least 2 cards, no more than 5, I would say, that correspond to this memory. And so for that, you might want to consider cards that like represent your emotional state, or if there are other people in this scenario, like who they may be, maybe their personality, but also maybe their emotions in the situation. If it's a very particular memory, the location, anything like that, any details that feel salient to the memory, you might want to just pick a card. And there's obviously no wrong answers for that. So it's really just up to you what cards you feel like are most strongly connected and correspond to this memory, that really make up this memory for you, and its aromatic profile, as I called it in the last activity. And then you're going to want to, like a memory map, you might want to Google it if you're not familiar with a memory map. So you're going to want to like do these like branching off circles, and you'll put each of the cards in a circle around it. So you have your center memory and scent, and then you're going to want to put like, I don't know, 5 of cups here, disappointment. 5 of cups. So, and then down here you're going to want to put, let's say for example, the universe, or over here, and then you'll put the 3 of swords, something like that. And then, so based on what you know about the card, if you know the keywords, the title, you'll put another one branching off of that. So for the 5 of cups, then you'll want to put like disappointment in another one. And for the 3 of swords, then you'll want to put sorrow. God, this is really sad. But yeah, so it kind of goes like that. And then from there, not just the keywords, but any associations you have with that card, feelings you have about that card, what you're seeing in the card. For the universe, for example, you're going to want to see the dancer. You might want to put like dancing, or, I don't know, the colors, the feelings that it evokes, things like that. Just whatever comes to mind. Again, no wrong answers. So it's whatever you feel is connected to that card, and obviously ultimately connected to that memory and that scent. And they can interconnect with each other as well, which I did plenty of, and I thought it was really interesting. So yeah, it's complete when you have at least like 3 emanations from the center, and also whenever you feel like it's complete, because there's no ending there. But whenever you feel like you're ready, just, this is a map of where you've been. Another thing that I read in this article that I had read about our sense of smell was about also how it is used to sort of map where we've been. And I thought that was a really interesting concept, and I think that's a beautiful thing about memory, is it is a sort of map that we can track kind of the experiences that we've had and the paths that we've taken. I think that's a metaphor that we use quite often, but it's more than just a metaphor, which is really cool. But yeah, this is just, I would say, I considered this memory map to be a sort of a small representation of the neural pathways that exist in my brain for this particular scent, for this aroma, for this memory. And so once your memory map is complete, just take a look at it, sit with it, gaze on it, and just journal about it for 5 to 10 minutes. Nothing dramatic, just, whatever feels right for you, just for a few minutes. Take some time to just journal about what you're seeing, your responses to it, what's coming up for you. Free write, whatever. And then lastly, we will close to do the counterpart of the exhalation, the inhalation exhalation reading. So this is another 4-card reading. In this one, once again, we're talking about the connection with scent and smell, that is breath. So inhaling, exhaling, things like that. So of course, breathing is an essential part of our sense of smell. And so we're going to just explore that process of exhalation this time, which, the air, it comes upward and outward, and we expel it via contracting the lungs, the ribs moving down, and the diaphragm relaxing. So I thought it was a really interesting thing to learn about, and to just imagine the way that the air flows and the way that the body sort of moves, the lungs and the ribs and the diaphragm and all of these parts of the body that facilitate this unconscious process of breathing. Is unconscious the right word? But yeah, this process of breathing that's very natural to us and happens, and of course is the way that we stay alive. So interestingly enough, yeah, I just find it really interesting, like, as a, as compared to like hearing and seeing, it's not tied to something that sort of keeps us alive, whereas smell is tied to something that keeps us alive, which is breathing, through the nose, out through the mouth, as they have us do. But also just, in that process of breathing, of course, like I said, we have the oxygen and the CO2 being exchanged through the body. So furthering that idea, the first question is, what have I been holding on to that I am now releasing? And the second question is, what contraction is required for that release? And so, we're working with that expelling and contracting in order to expel. And as you contract, release, expel, there is a natural exchange. So harkening back to that exchange of oxygen and CO2, and also with aroma and memory, and there's an exchange of stimuli and emotion and things like that. But yeah, there's a natural exchange, in this case in the form of ideas, feelings, energy, being states, things like that, as far as this reading goes. So this third question is, or prompt is, define the exchange. Define this exchange that's occurring here as you release, contract, what is being exchanged. And lastly, the fourth question is, what relaxation will occur in this process? I found the relaxation of the diaphragm to be very poignant for me as I was just really sitting with all of the information and things that were inspiring me about smell and breath. That relaxation of the diaphragm, I don't know, it just really stuck out to me. So all of these things combined, I hope that you enjoy it. I'd love to know what your experience is. This week for me has been super, oh man, it's been, I don't even know how to describe it, honestly. I know we're going to be getting into the reflections in a few days, so I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'd be really interested to know kind of how this week is differing from others for you all, especially when we get to that. I'm sure we'll discuss even more. But yeah, this week has been super, super interesting, and I'm really excited to, hear how it goes for you all. Thank you so much for being here and for being part of this. It's been such a journey so far. Like, I don't even know how to do it justice, honestly. But yeah, I am going to be getting into my experience now. So if you're leaving now, I'll see you soon. And if you're gonna keep joining me, let's keep it going. For this aroma and memory, I found it to be really interesting that I was coming up with scents and people as opposed to, I should say fragrances and people as opposed to like particular scents. One of the things that surprised me was, that came to mind originally that wasn't a fragrance, was apple pie. And I was thinking about like one of the first times I had ever sort of made apple pie or had an experience of it, which was at this like very, I wouldn't even call it a camp. It was like a summer camp that I did. But yeah, I was like with my friends and the person who was running the camp. We were like making apple pie together. It was just something that just, I don't know. I was just like, where did this memory even come from? Very surprising. Granted, I have other memories of apple pie, but this one was just like the first time that I had ever been like, oh my gosh, like people are cooking apples. Which is such a like a ridiculous thing to even think. But I was just like, the process of cooking apples was just so strange to me. I don't know. But yeah, I was also thinking about like this particular tea that I drink in, how I have made it such a patterned process of reading poetry whenever I drink it, that whenever I smell it, I just think of like my favorite poet. It's, I don't know, super interesting. But so yeah, I had a few others there, but those are just a couple that I wanted to share. And like I said, I had, interestingly enough, been mostly thinking of like fragrance and people. So even when I created the activity and I was experimenting with it for the first time, I was wearing a sweater that had belonged to a family member who had passed away earlier this year, and so the scent on the sweater was it was still there, and so I kind of went through that as like the experimentation for like kind of working out the kinks and seeing how I felt about this activity being what it is. And it worked out so beautifully, and I really enjoyed it that I didn't expect to then go a second time around to also make the memory be very much a person and an experience with a person, as opposed to a like event or moment. So that's just a way to show that like it can go in any direction, and there's no right or wrong on how to do it. I will say, obviously, like I said before, that it's really a matter of going with the memory that feels best for you to explore, and that doesn't pose any like risk to your mental health or anything like that. Obviously, what I've experienced with it was a little heavier maybe, but yeah, do whatever works best for you, and of course take care of yourself. No need to go down a path that's not safe. Okay, so I did go with one of the memories that was around fragrance and a particular person. So I won't name the fragrance, and I won't name the person, not that you're going to know them anyway, but it's a person who is not in my life anymore. So the cards that came up for this one, or at least, that I chose for this one, I chose 5 cards because me, I really have a hard time doing a few. When I did the original activity, I think I did 4. And I think that's kind of the sweet spot. Probably 3 or 4, or 2 to 4. I think 5 is kind of a lot, but me, I kind of do a lot of things. So the 4 cards that came for me, or I should say the 5, were the 2 of Swords, the Princess of Wands. I love her. The Chariot, the Lust card, and the 8 of Wands. And I'm gonna sneeze. Okay, so the 8 of Wands was really interesting because it felt like almost like the scent itself. It was this like fresh, open, just like really like clear scent. It had like a clarity to it, but also this like quickness of it, and the communication, like all these things were coming up for this card. What was really interesting was somehow, when I brought up the Princess of Wands, which very much felt like me in this situation and in this relationship with this person, I felt this feeling of like excitement and vulnerability, and also fear, which brought up the Chariot. There was this feeling of, I think this was more so the other person, but also a dynamic that was involved. There was this, once again, going back to the 8 of Wands, this sort of swiftness and movement. But also what really stuck out to me was the armor on the person. So we had this like juxtaposition of vulnerability and, being, and lack of vulnerability, I guess you could call it. Which, of course brings up the Lust card, which I won't get into. Because that's a whole other thing. And then the 2 of Swords. So there was this sense of like peace, and like this sense of inner peace, as well as, bringing in other meanings. I mean, this feeling of like crossing paths and feeling like your paths sort of diverge. But yeah, that's, without getting too personal, I think one thing that's really interesting that I've noticed as a phenomenon that's happening throughout thothtober is that as we go, it gets deeper and deeper. So as we move further on the path and on this journey through the thoth, I find that more and more there's more depth happening, and I feel like I'm exploring in a deeper way. And it's interesting because I usually don't get this linear sense of depth. Like I usually don't feel the sense of like depth that steadily gets deeper and deeper. It's usually kind of like a little deeper, a little, it's more of like a wave kind of thing. But with Thothtober, I find that I'm just sort of like getting deeper and deeper. And so then there's this figuring out of like, okay, how do I share this? But what I thought was another really interesting thing was that for this first one, I felt when I did this memory map, I felt like there was more here. Like I could have picked more cards. There were a lot of cards that I had originally chosen. And I had sort of narrowed it down to this one because I felt like they were right for the activity. However, when I came back, well, what I felt was, even after journaling, well, while I was journaling, I was like, you know what, I think I could do this again because I think that, what did I say? Oh, I think I just said that I could do this exercise again with other cards because they sort of just kept coming back to me. And one of those cards that felt like it just had to be chosen was the Empress. And I couldn't figure out why, but I think when the second time I did it, everything made a little bit more sense, honestly. And I felt like, okay, that's what I probably should have done in the first place. So I did a second one on the back. And this one, I think they're both really good. And so I guess secretly I did cheat and I did 10 cards. But I think really what I did was just continue to explore the connections, especially because it wasn't a particular event. It was really a sort of like amalgamation of memories, a grouping of memories. And so putting that all together, of course, it's going to have a lot more of a far-reaching thing. So this is just to show you can do the exercise wrong. It's just the way that you do it. So when I was experimenting with it, I think I did it more correctly than when I did it within Thothtober. So that's just another way of putting it. So I will just show you for the second one, I guess, in case you're curious on the second time around what cards I chose. So of course I chose the Empress, and then I went with the 8 of Discs, Prudence, and then the Star. Is that back? It's not backwards. I should tell by the back, and I can see it. And then I did the Universe, and lastly, Disappointment, the 5 of Cups. So yeah, this one, like I said, went in a better, more, I felt like more emotional. I think the first one was a little bit more intellectual because I was trying to do the activity correctly. Even though I had started off doing it kind of incorrectly. But yeah, this one I felt a little bit more connected to because I chose cards that felt right as opposed to seemed right for what I was being asked. So I don't know how else to show you as an example of, do it how you want to do it. But yeah, so moving into the exhalation reading. God, I really enjoyed this. The readings this month are just knocking my socks off, if that's the right phrase. I'm just blown away continually by, like I said, the steady depth that I'm able to get into. So for the first question of what I've been holding onto that I'm now releasing, I got the 4 of Cups. And I mean, the connection between this reading and the inhalation reading is just so perfect. Because what in my environment is being drawn into my being was the 4 of Swords, and then what I'm releasing is the 4 of Cups. So it's interesting if just looking at it purely from a elemental perspective, the 4 of Air is being drawn in and the 4 of Cups is being released. So, on a sort of mental level, I'm sort of taking in mental stability, if you will, and releasing emotional stagnation. I feel like what this reading is referring to, which I won't get into the details of obviously my personal stuff, but I think it really has illuminated this stagnant area of my emotions, which I really appreciate because, like I said in the first reading, in the inhalation reading, it was about an emotional rebirth. So I'm releasing this feeling that I've had about specific needing things to be a certain way, and just being what it said in the guidebook that really stuck out to me was this luxury is a responsibility as well as a gift. And so really just giving me new perspective on what I have thought to be a need in the past and recognizing the responsibility of it, but then also looking at the gift of what I'm allowing in once I let go of that expectation. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyway. The second card that I got, which interestingly enough came up in the last activity, is the Five of Cups. So that's for what contraction is required. For that, it was so perfect, where it's just like allowing disappointment to sort of run its course, to run through me, and to be able to withstand it, and to expect it. So just contracting and gaining a sort of more potent tolerance for disappointment. I don't really know how to like say that out loud. But yeah, that was, I really felt in this reading, especially putting them together, that the thoth was really seeing me, for sure. And as you contract, release, and expel, there's a natural exchange. So define the exchange. This is where, it definitely, I feel like the deck sees me. I feel this is really exciting. And I really loved that. So I guess ultimately what I would define this as integration and initiation, in the sense that this is sort of a new chapter. Lately I feel like I've made a transition in my way of being, in my way of understanding, in my way of operating. And I feel like that is definitely showing up here with the Ace of Discs. And the entire entry, so I wrote my notes, and then I went into the book, Tarot Mirror of the Soul, and the entire entry just really, really resonated with me. It says, intended here is the possibility of our entrance into a new consciousness and readiness for a life which is externally and internally rich. Body and soul, too long set at odds, now meet in harmonic union. And wow. So as I release the need for what I had, the need that I had before, I, faced disappointment, allowed disappointment to sort of run its course. And now I have this opportunity to experience a deeper level of richness and consciousness, which is, once again, hearkening back to the inhalation reading with the Devil and the Queen of Cups, and the whole reading. I was going to say, and the Nine of Wands. So then, the entire reading of just strengthening and being able to withstand a deeper level of consciousness. And it says this process leads to a real consciousness of the self, a basis for real success. And that's kind of the crux of all that this reading has been about, is about my conceptions and understandings around success. And lastly, what relaxation will occur in this process? I got the Eight of Swords, which is not something you would expect. But since I had worked with it earlier in thothtober already, I felt that the response here is just like no longer feeling trapped, feeling like things are getting in the way, no longer feeling oppressed. Because I think I talked about like the two swords with the six, and that once you bring the six into harmony, they can overpower this overpowering presence. And so going back to just what we talked about with the Ace of Discs, with the body and soul meeting in harmonic union, I felt like that was a beautiful way to end that. But the affirmation from the book was, I am relaxed and trust life. And so it was just really, really beautiful. And I feel so grateful to the deck and to this experience for just allowing me to elucidate and sort of make clear this process, this emotional experience that I'm having, and this next level of understanding and behaving that I'm sort of moving through and moving forward with. But yeah, so that's my experience with this week so far. I'm really excited to do the reflections and then share those with you in a couple of days. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I can't wait to hear more of your experiences. Everything is in the description, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.